Evening settles over Midtown like a silk shawl. The glass tower at 57th and 5th glows with 100 chandeliers, and the private dining room on the top floor hums with careful laughter, crystal, and the discreet choreography of wealth. At the furthest table, a man sits alone before a plate he will not finish. Adrian Vale, software magnate, apostle of data and markets, keeps his back straight as if the posture itself can hold back memory. The city lights stretch beneath him like a neural network, reliable and cold. The maitre d' moves toward the door, but he is not the one who enters. A figure in a threadbare coat appears in the doorway as though the night itself has remembered someone it forgot. The linen rustles, the room pauses, and a hushed astonishment passes from table to table like a ripple on still water. The man stands inside the threshold with a leather bag clutched to his chest. The bag is sleek, expensive, out of place in his hands. He looks not at the wealth around him but at Adrian Vale. Straight across the room, past vases and orchids and mirrored walls. Eyes the color of river stone, steady despite the embarrassment of being there. His beard is clean but unruly. His shoes have known rain. There is a quiet dog waiting at the elevator behind him. A mottled shepherd mix who sits without a sound, tail sweeping the marble in patient arcs. The maitre d' finds his voice, soft but stern. "Sir, this is a private." The man breaks across the room like a breeze through closed curtains, gentle, inevitable. He stops at Adrian's table, sets the leather bag down, and steps back as if the bag belongs to a distance he will not trespass. The bag shines with monogrammed initials. A.V. Adrian's mouth has already formed the question, but the stranger speaks first. His voice is low from days of winter air. "You dropped this." Some patrons look pointedly away. Others stare with the right to stare. Adrian, who believes in locks and logins and the predictable ways things are returned, studies the bag and then the man. "Where?" 45th Street. Near the car. A faint smile, apologetic without being small. "I saw it before anyone else did." Before anyone else? Adrian's mind ticks. There was a charity board meeting on philanthropy and neural interfaces half a block from there. The car, the call, the quick step from curb to door, yes, he could have dropped it. His face does not move, but his fingers test the zipper. Inside lies the exact sum his assistant withdrew for an off-the-books emergency. A stubborn donor who preferred cash to commitments, as if obligations could be felt better in the hand. 50,000 in envelopes, still stacked. A notebook. A small velvet ring box that holds no ring anymore, only emptiness shaped like a ring. The man's gaze moves to the empty velvet curve and away again. Politely. He swallows. "I didn't take anything." "I can see that," Adrian says, though what he truly sees is an equation that refuses to balance. Risk against gain, need against choice, statistics against a single stubborn outcome. He had run models predicting human behavior for years, but the man in front of him exists outside the histogram, a bright miracle on a scatter plot of darker expectations. The maitre d' clears his throat again, gentler this time. "Mr. Vale, shall I?" "It's fine," Adrian says. He is a guest. The room exhales. The man seems ready to leave, the dog rising as if on a shared breath from down the hall, but Adrian's voice stops him. "What's your name?" "Moses." The name hangs between them like a story older than the building. "Moses Reed." Adrian nods once. He should produce a crisp solution, call security, call someone, tip the man, return to the business of forgetting. Instead, he hears himself say, "Sit with me, Mr. Reed." Moses glances toward the elevator as if the dog has advised him with a flicker of ear. He lowers himself into the chair, careful with the napkin, grateful in a way that preserves his dignity. The server arrives wordlessly with a carafe of water, fills both glasses, disappears. "Why bring it here?" Adrian asks. Moses lifts his palms in something like a prayer and something like a shrug. "Your name was inside with an address I didn't trust more than my feet. People like me don't exactly sail through front desks." He smiles a little, not at himself but at the world that sometimes needs smiling at to be bearable. Besides, it seemed urgent. The way it was zipped, the way the leather had a warmth to it. As if you'd only just let go. Adrian cannot say whether this is poetry or perception, but he hears something else under the words, a hum like the memory of a lullaby heard through a wall. It is only the air conditioner. It is only nothing. He lets the illusion pass through him quietly as he studies Moses's hands. Careful hands, scarred but deft. They belong to a man who is built, carried, mended. The dog at the elevator, patient as a shadow, rests its muzzle on its paws but does not take its eyes from Moses. "What do you want?" Adrian asks. He means money. He almost always means money. Moses exhales, slow. His gaze touches the envelopes once, then returns to the city spread beneath the glass. "It's strange," he says, half to the night. "When you don't want anything, people assume you're hiding the thing you want most." Then he looks back to Adrian. "I want you to know I saw you drop it. That's all." "That can't be all," Adrian says, honest in his bewilderment. Moses's mouth almost laughs. "It can. But there's something else." His voice lowers, stitched with a sincerity that rearranges the air around it. "There's a boy 2 blocks from here. A kid with a cough that sounds like winter in his bones. He's got no business sounding like that at his age. If you're asking what I want most, it's for someone to hear him breathe and not walk by." Silence enters like a third person invited to sit. The chandeliers glitter patiently. Adrian feels the old, sensible instinct rise, call a clinic. Report it. Donate. But something older than sense moves under those instincts. A tide that notices the unnoticeable details. The way Moses's hands had hovered above the bag as if in blessing. The way the dog waited without protest. The way a faint breeze presses once against a window that does not open. He hears the memory of a song. Not even a song, only a 3-note fragment his late wife used to hum while folding shirts, while measuring flour. It is impossible to hear it here. He hears it anyway, as if the city itself exhaled the memory toward him and asked him to try again. He stands. "Show me the boy." A gasp, quickly hidden from a nearby table. The maitre d' glides toward him with all the respect money can buy and the doubt money cannot fix. "Sir, send my thanks to the chef," Adrian tells him, already collecting the bag. "Charge everything to my account." Moses rises as if relieved from a weight he was not meant to carry alone. Down the corridor, the dog stands and shakes its coat with a whisper of fur and forgiveness. The chandelier hum fades behind them as they step into the elevator's hush. As the doors close on the room of glass and expectation, a current of air crosses their faces. Cool, inexplicable. Adrian glances toward the ceiling for a vent. Moses only bows his head slightly, as a man might when a church door opens. The elevator sighs toward the ground. Somewhere between 40 floors and the street, the sound of a distant lullaby, just 3 notes, no more, floats like a leaf through Adrian's chest and is gone. He does not look at Moses, and Moses does not look at him. Both have begun to listen. Outside, Manhattan winter is 1,000 thin teeth. The sidewalk's wind tunnels lift napkins and wrappers into brief birds. Moses moves easily through it, the dog trotting beside him, as if the city reads him and steps aside. Adrian keeps pace with a stiffness more ritual than necessity. He has always walked as if bearing invisible, delicate instruments. "Rufus," Moses says in way of introduction, nodding toward the dog. The dog tilts his head, checking Adrian's soul with eyes that have never believed a suit. He thinks he's in charge. Maybe he is, Adrian says, and is not sure why the sentence offers him relief. They pass a florist shutting in the cold, a window of violins asleep on velvet, a deli steaming its windows with soup. They turn down a narrower street ruled by scaffolding and neon. Moses stops at the mouth of an alley that is more suggestion than space. 2 brick walls, a lace of fire escape ladders, a dumpster humming with the old lunches of better days. A boy sits on a flattened cardboard panel near the alley's shallow turn. He has a lunar cap with a missing snap, a sweatshirt that says a school that has not seen him recently, and a cough that adjusts the air when it arrives, arranging it smaller for a while. He is not beautiful in the romanced way of children in catalogs. He is beautiful in the way things that have fought for their breath are beautiful. Beside him sits a brown paper bag that gives off the ghost of oranges. "Jalen," Moses says, his voice changed by gentleness. "This is Mr. Vale. He owns." He waves a hand at the skyscraper sky. "A lot of what people point at." Jalen lifts his chin half an inch. He has a chess player's eyes. He looks at Adrian the way a person examines a bridge before stepping on it, calculating its weight, its promise, its history of holding. "You don't have to see me," he says, which is half permission and half protection. Adrian sets the leather bag down on the closed lid of a trash can as if sanctifying a small altar. "I see you," he says, and hears the words land in the air with more meaning than he intended. The boy's cough scrapes through the plaster of the alley. Adrian flinches. "That cough, how long?" "3 weeks, Moses says. "For, if you count the week he called it nothing." Jalen swallows as if swallowing a word he will not tell. The word alone. Rufus shifts, lays his head on the boy's knee. Jalen's fingers sink into fur as if remembering a map. The dog sighs. Adrian's mind's old engine whirs, ready to solve in the currency it knows best. He could call his concierge physician. He could call a car. He could move money from one place to another so that in the morning a social worker knocks and somebody writes a report that says we tried. He feels the old defense rise like glass. Make a donation, deliver an anecdote. Then the 3 notes of the balcony of memory pass over his shoulder again, a scant wind unfurling the edge of his coat. He glances up. The alley has no current, yet the edge flutters once, indisputably. He kneels without thinking. He does not kneel in boardrooms. "Jalen," he says, "can I listen to your lungs? I'm not a doctor, but I hear things." Jalen considers, nods once. Adrian rests a hand lightly on the boy's back and the other on his chest, and for a moment the winter makes a small room of them. He listens, not just for sound but for rhythm, for the way a person's breath tells the truth that their words are too polite to carry. He hears the rattle along the right side, not deep enough for catastrophe, too deep for comfort. A wheeze that would be music if it were not the opposite. "Bronchitis," Adrian says, more a hypothesis than a verdict. "Maybe worse if it sits." He looks to Moses. "Has he been to the clinic?" Moses gives a slow nod that has the sorrow of bureaucracy in it. "Twice. They gave syrup. They told him to rest." He smiles without contempt. "The city keeps us alive in small ways and fails us in big ones." "Does he have a guardian?" The question is the old architecture of caution speaking through Adrian's mouth. "Sometimes," Jalen says softly. "Sometimes is a long time. There are 1,000 reasonable responses." Adrian discards them all, not nobly but as a person discards shoes that suddenly feel like someone else's. "Come with me," he says. The words astonish him. They arrive already decided, like a letter he wrote while sleeping. "Tonight, both of you, I'll call a friend. We'll get your chest looked at properly. And then we'll see." Jalen's brow folds into suspicion and longing, stitched together by necessity. "People come," he says, almost an accusation. "They take pictures. They bring sandwiches. Then they're gone." "I will not take a picture," Adrian says. The absurdity of the sentence makes Moses smile. "And if I am gone tomorrow, you can hate me with your whole life. But let me not be gone tonight." A pause. A test. The steam of the city's breath drifts around them. Somewhere far above, a siren decides to be quiet. Moses touches Jalen's shoulder with 2 fingers, not directing, only accompanying. Jalen stands. The cough comes, pulls him forward like an invisible hand, then releases. He wipes his mouth with his sleeve, embarrassed. He looks smaller than the cold. They return to the street. Adrian calls a number he hasn't used since his wife's last winter. A pulmonologist who never sends bills to people who need him most. "Old favor," Adrian says into the phone. "Tonight." He hears the familiar voice agree because there are still some men in the city who understand old favors are the only currency that matters past midnight. A sedan glides to the curb, not the sleek black kind but the kind that looks like a memory of someone's father's car. The driver nods to Moses like an old comrade. "You and I both know how streets work." They all fold themselves into the car's warm breath. Rufus leaps in back as if cars are just moving parks. As the door closes, a breath of air breaks across Adrian's knuckles, warm, impossible in this weather, fragrant with the faintest suggestion of oranges. He glances at the brown bag by Jalen's feet. The top is open enough to reveal 3 oranges still wearing their leaves, a green like small versions of hope. Jalen notices his glance. "Found them," the boy says. "At closing." The lady at the fruit stand pretends not to see me when she sets them by the trash. She's not very good at pretending. "Names," Moses murmurs as they pull into traffic, "matter more than money. His are real." "His name is Jalen," Adrian says, as if proofreading the world. He looks back. The boy has drifted against Rufus, winter loosening for the first time around his shoulders. The city slides past in glass and neon. A strange tranquility settles over Adrian like a shawl he had forgotten he owned. As they cross Park Avenue, 3 notes, a lullaby fragment no one is singing, run through the space between them like a shy child darting through a crowd. Jalen stirs and settles deeper. Moses closes his eyes briefly, and his mouth moves in words without sound. Adrian does not pray, but he feels something in him lean toward silence and nod. The pulmonologist's office is lit like a chapel. Machines that sound like bells. A nurse with hands that know how to be the right temperature. Jalen breathes into tubes and answers questions with the candor poverty gives. Exactly as much as true, no more. The diagnosis is careful, not catastrophic. "We can get ahead of this," the doctor says. "But not in an alley." He writes prescriptions. He calls in a favor of his own to a clinic that will not lose Jalen in a folder. "We need an address," the nurse says, apologetic, as if addresses and planets were part of the same system. "My place," Adrian says. The nurse hesitates. "Tonight. I have rooms I don't use," he says, and something in his voice. Fatigue, decision, a door unlocking, persuades what policies cannot. Paperwork appears and fills itself with names. The dog waits in a corner with the patience of saints. And when at last the night lets them go, they return to the car and the cold with medicine and a plan small enough to succeed. Back at the tower, the doorman blinks but opens the door. They ride the elevator that once carried Adrian and his wife from birthdays to ordinary Tuesdays. The doors open on marble and art and a view of the park, black as a listening ear. Jalen steps in with unshowy wonder, his eyes learning each surface without hunger. He places the oranges on the kitchen island as if offering back the warmth they gave. "Guest rooms this way," Adrian says, then halts. He does not want to place Moses and the boy in a room like items in storage. He looks to the library instead, where a sofa the size of a small nation faces a wall of books. The room smells faintly of cedar and of flour, of paper, of lavender ironed into sheets. Library, then. Closer. Moses stands in the doorway, hands in pockets, not touching anything, as a person used to museums does. He looks at the books with the kind of longing that is not for ownership but for the old companionship of pages. "You live in a sky," he says. "Does it feel like living in an idea?" Adrian considers the question which no investor has asked him. "Some days," he says. "Most." He brings blankets, a pitcher of water, the small machine that will mist Jalen's air with comfort. He sets medicine on the table and explains with patience he did not know he owned. Jalen listens fiercely, in that way of children who intend on surviving. Moses tucks the boy's cap into his coat pocket and sits on the floor with his back to the sofa, so that Jalen sees him if he wakes. Rufus stations himself exactly where a dog should, halfway between door and bed, a sentinel of breathing. The hour grows honest. Adrian stands in the library doorway and does not know how to end his sentence. "I'll leave the door open," he says. He almost says, "in case of the night." He almost says, "in case you need me." "Good night, Mr. Vale," Jalen murmurs, eyes already heavier. "Thank you for seeing me." A simple sentence, offered without debt. Adrian nods once, too moved to risk a second. He steps away, then pauses as a sound traces the air. It is a melody not possible in an unplayed room. It comes as if from a hallway that does not exist. 3 notes, then 3 more, Then a line his mind follows, though he does not know it until it becomes his own breath. It is the lullaby she used to hum without words, the one they never named, the one he could not find in any music until now. The humidifier's mist breathes into the air like a soft ghost. Jalen's shoulders relax. Moses's eyes lower, not in fear, in awe, like a man noticing a tide. Adrian does not tell himself it is nothing. He lets the undefended thought rise like bread. Perhaps love is a technology older than any I understand. He leaves the door open. Morning has a way of forgiving the city for the night. Pale light slides across the windows and climbs the spines of the books until the titles gleam like new. When Adrian wakes, the house feels different in a way that is not just sound but arrangement of meaning. The kitchen knows where to focus. The hallway understands purpose. He dresses without looking at the mirror he has avoided. He does not touch the ringless box in the drawer. In the library, Jalen wakes with his cheek against the dog's back and a humidity curl laid gently over his forehead. His breathing is less a struggle, more a conversation. He sits up carefully, as if not to disturb the air that has finally agreed to stay. Moses rises from the floor like a man much younger than he is. The scent of oranges waits patiently on the island. Adrian makes breakfast as if inventing a ritual. He barely cooks. A service usually arrives with perfect eggs dressed in perfect names. Today he peels oranges and slices bread and scrambles eggs into something that would never pass a hotel but might pass for care. He sets the table without precision. There is joy in asymmetry when a home returns to being one. He pours water and warms milk and realizes milk, warmed, smells like memory. Jalen arrives and stops in the doorway like a person considering whether a dream will permit entry. "Is this allowed?" he asks, only halfway joking. "In this house," Adrian answers, setting a plate, "I am currently in charge of what's allowed." They eat, or rather they practice eating like a new language. Slowly, with listening. Jalen chews with reverence. He eats the oranges last, as children do with the best thing. Moses thanks Adrian in a way that lifts the word out of habit and into music. Rufus places one paw gently on Moses's knee, a treaty signed. Between seconds, small questions find their places. "School?" Adrian asks softly. "Where?" "Sometimes nowhere," Jalen says, with more honesty than he owes. "Sometimes I read at the shelter. Mr. Reed says reading is how you turn a room into a bigger place." "It is," Adrian says, surprised to hear his voice soften. "Books are how I traveled before I could afford planes." Moses considers him, smiles. "What brought you back?" "My wife," Adrian says, then clears his throat, the way a man might put away a fragile instrument before the city bumps into it. "She did. When she was tired of airports." Moses nods once. "Then she brought you home." He ought to correct the tense, to say was to make everything passed and properly stored, but he lets it stand. He washes plates. Jalen dries them with a towel that remembers other mornings. The three of them, a new choreography, move around one another in the kind of peace that is not silence but trust. After breakfast, Jalen explores the library as if mapping a landscape by touch. He runs his fingers along the spines, reading titles under his breath. He stumbles on a picture frame turned face down on a shelf and stops, not to pry, only to stand with the object the way a friend might stand beside a guarded gate. He does not flip it. He asks, "Do you have books about stars?" Adrian does. He brings down one his wife loved. A battered, bright atlas with pages that smell like some childhood he never had. Jalen opens it and kneels on the sofa like a sailor learning the language of the sea. He finds Orion, beyond the city's permission. He finds the Pleiades and pronounces the syllables as if counting small daughters. He presses a fingertip to the paper sky, laughs once, returns to study. "What do you like?" Adrian asks Moses quietly in the kitchen, not sure if he is asking about tea or the world. "Fixing things." Moses wipes the counter as if affection could be a cloth. "Hinges. Stories. I used to be a carpenter. Then I was someone's husband. Then I was grief. Now I'm almost here." He glances toward Jalen, the way a compass glances toward north without making a show of it. The kids, he's not mine, not blood. But he found me right when I needed a reason to point my feet. Where's his mother? Moses looks at the floor, not out of shame. We don't know. We knew. Then we didn't. The city is a place where you can be seen by millions and still be invisible in the one moment someone needs to see you. When she's ready, she'll return. Or she won't, and we'll teach him how to carry love in a different shape. Adrian hears the language and recognizes something of church in it, though Moses uses no church words. He does not say how algorithms fail at absence. He does not say how his company built a predictive system that could anticipate credit risk across 3 continents and yet could not anticipate the hour his wife would close her eyes for the last time and not open them again. He leans a hand against the marble, cool, reliable, and lets the unreliability in him rise like a tide and recede without drowning him. Stay today, he says, because he wants the day to be simple for the boy. Stay until evening. We can make a list, a clinic schedule, school contact, legal things. I know a social worker who knows how to do her job like someone who believes in people. People who believe, Moses says, as if adding a footnote to a book, change rooms. The day slides into something that feels like a truce with the world. Adrian emails very important men that he is indisposed due to a prior human engagement. He calls the social worker. Her name is Dina. She has eyes like windows you can open, and explains in nouns without apology. Boy, cough, shelter, plan. Bring him by, she says. Bring the man too. Bring the dog if you have to. Sometimes dogs keep the truth calmer. At lunch, Jalen teaches Rufus a new trick. Stay when an orange segment is placed on his paw. Eat only when Jalen laughs. Rufus, who understands laughter as a currency, obeys. The boy laughs. It sounds like the first 3 notes of something wider. In the afternoon, the 3 of them descend in the elevator into the useful parts of the city. Dina's office is on a 2nd floor above a bakery, which means it smells like hope disguised as bread. She listens without checking her watch. She says words that place their ship on a map. Temporary guardianship, medical consent, overnight stays. She looks at Adrian differently than other professionals do. Not with deference, with partnership. You're not adopting a cause, she says. You're meeting a person. Keep doing that, and the paperwork will eventually catch up to the truth. Moses signs what he can. Adrian signs what he must. Jalen draws in the corner, the dog's head on his foot. A universe of pencil constellations on scrap paper. He draws a house with a window and a man at the window and a dog by the door. Then he draws 3 small stars over the roof and titles it in his careful, warrior handwriting, Home, for now. On the way back, the sky performs one of those late winter miracles that Manhattan pretends to be tired of, but secretly adores. A sunbeam drops between buildings and strikes a puddle into gold. Jalen steps in it deliberately, shoes beaming. Moses and Adrian look at each other with the look of men who are aware of a third presence and cannot name it without unmaking it. They do not say miracle. They agree not to say it the way you agree not to wake a sleeping child. That evening, the penthouse does not feel like a museum. It feels like a page in a book that has just been turned. Adrian shows Jalen how to make hot chocolate without scalding the milk. Jalen shows Adrian how to peel an orange so the rind comes off in a single perfect flower. Moses finds a loose hinge in the hallway cabinet and tightens it with a coin, a small sermon about repair. The dog patrols the edges of the night, satisfied that the house can be left alone with itself for a breath or two. Before bed, Jalen sits cross-legged on the library rug and hums a sound he says isn't a song. It is only what his mother hummed when she had nothing else to give. A braid of 3 notes, braided again, the gentlest call and response between breath and hope. The humidifier releases mist the way the ocean releases foam at the ankles of those who trust it. Adrian leans against the doorway and lets the sound come through him. He does not force memory to behave. He lets it sit beside him and be quiet. When the hum fades, the room seems to continue it. Moses places a blanket over the boy's shoulders. Rest, he says, the prayer hiding inside the word like a coin in bread. Tomorrow is a room we can enter together. Adrian turns off the lamp. As darkness breathes, a current crosses the room from nowhere to nowhere, the softest wind a house can make, and kisses Jalen's cheek the way mothers do. The boy's mouth lifts in sleep. Moses notices and does not draw attention. Adrian closes his eyes and hears a kitchen from years ago. Flour dust in the air. A woman quietly humming while the city snowed outside. He lets himself answer with 3 notes that live only on the back of his tongue. And somewhere, beyond proof, a window that cannot open sighs as if it had. Morning 2 arrives with a test that looks like an ordinary walk. They are halfway down the block toward the clinic when the first complication steps out of a coffee shop. A man in a jacket that announces his business before his mouth does, with teeth like gleaming assumptions. "Mr. Vale," he calls, the syllables smiling for 1,000 readers. Adrian Vale with companions. "Care to comment on last night?" Adrian slows, then stills. He has seen this man's byline dart toward blood and call it water. "On what, specifically?" The journalist's eyes hop from Moses to Jalen to Rufus and back again. "On the rumor that you were seen leaving a luxury restaurant with a vagrant and a child, carrying a bag that looked suspiciously full." He says it like a nursery rhyme, he says it like a hook. Moses steps half forward, then half back, instinct arguing with dignity. Jalen's hand finds Rufus's scruff like a rope thrown from a boat to shore. Adrian measures his breath into a kind of prayer he would not name. He looks at the man and chooses a sentence with the dignity of a bell. "No comment on rumors," he says. "But if you're asking whether I walked a boy to a doctor, yes." "Who is he to you?" The journalist's grin leans toward cruelty. "A person," Adrian answers. "Which is enough." The man smirks. "That's not a legal category." "Not yet," Adrian says. He is surprised at the steadiness of his own voice. The 3 notes of last night run through him like a hand smoothing a page. "Come on," he murmurs to Moses and Jalen. He does not look back. The clinic welcomes them into a ritual of listening, the opposite of rumor. Jalen's lungs improve under medicine's quiet charm. Dina stops by with more papers signed in the right places. They craft a schedule that looks like a plan and feels like a promise. "Let me arrange a home visit," she says. "We'll make this official for a while." On their way home, the second complication arrives with a blue light and a low siren that chooses caution over spectacle. A police car pulls to the curb without panic. The officer who steps out is tired in the way of people who still want to do the world right after the world has made that difficult. He approaches with courtesy in his hands. "Mr. Vale." He lifts a brow with apology. "We had a report late last night. A missing property call. A bag, large sum of cash." The caller was erratic, then hung up. "Your name and a description of your bag were mentioned by someone else at the restaurant. We're not here to accuse, sir. Just to confirm no one is in danger and all property is where it needs to be." Adrian meets the officer's eyes. "It was my bag," he says, heat rising in his face not from guilt but from the clumsy public nature of grace. "It was returned to me by Mr. Reed here, intact." The officer glances at Moses, and the glance carries centuries of assumptions that both men feel and neither man created. Moses holds his ground without anger, though anger would volunteer. "Yes, officer," he says steady. "I returned it." "You didn't accept a reward?" Moses smiles, a small, bright thing that forgives the question. "I accepted a hot cup of tea. I brought a boy to a doctor. That was my payment." The officer's eyes soften. He has a daughter who hums herself to sleep. He nods once. "Thank you. I'll close the complaint." He hesitates, then adds, as if breaking protocol for kindness, "You did right, both of you." As the cruiser pulls away, the wind picks up. Not the bitter kind, a low, warm push that feels like a hand on a shoulder. Jalen looks up, frowning in concentration. "Do you feel that?" "What?" Adrian asks, though he knows. "The apartment wind," Jalen says. He grins, sudden and bright. "But outside." Moses laughs and shakes his head like a man who knows when not to explain a blessing. They cross the street and the light changes while they are still in it, but the cars wait anyway, as if someone said please without speaking. Back home, the day settles into hours that feel not miraculous at all, which is often how miracles prefer to be. Embedded in the ordinary, invisible on first pass, visible on the second. Jalen naps because the medicine suggests it and because safety does. Moses repairs a loose kitchen drawer as if each screw were a verse. Adrian opens his laptop and closes it again, learning a new skill. The luxury of not answering everyone immediately. He writes an email to the journalist that he will not send. It is not always a scandal when a man remembers he is human. Late afternoon. A sound rises like a tide against glass. It takes a breath to hear it for what it is. Not music, yet music. Not the humidifier, yet breath. The same 3 notes, once, twice, thrice, thread the length of the hallway as if someone walked along a wall dragging a finger through silk. Jalen sits up and smiles as if he has recognized a family voice. She used to hum that, he says. My mom. On good nights. What did you call it? Moses asks softly. Jalen shrugs. She said it wasn't a song. She said it was breath learning to be brave. Adrian turns his face toward the sound and, for once, does not try to locate its source. He lets the unprovable be generous. His chest expands until it is less a container for air and more a room for something that does not need proof to enter. He looks at the boy, at the man, at the dog, and understands that he is no longer rehearsing the look of family. He is in the middle of one. He will discover soon enough that ordinary goodness draws the world's attention as surely as scandal does. He will learn that attention is a test. He will be asked for explanations and receipts and definitions that narrow love into something the law can hold. For now, he watches Jalen turn the page of the star atlas with hands that no longer shake. For now, that is enough. It begins with a phone call. Not the kind coming from inside the house, that old superstition, but a call from a number that has waited too long to be used. Dina speaks quickly, professionally, a woman accustomed to translating emergencies into steps. There's an issue, she says. A complaint was filed. Someone claims the boy was coerced away from his environment by an unknown benefactor. They used big words and bigger assumptions. A home visit is now not optional. It's immediate, and there might be press. Adrian's mouth goes dry in the way it did once in a hospital. Bring them, he says. Prepare, she corrects, not unkindly. Tell the truth, and understand that the truth frightens people who make a living out of simpler stories. Within an hour, the apartment holds government in the shape of people who want to do the right thing but measure it in checkboxes. A man with a tie that turns his throat into a fact. A woman with glasses that mean business and compassion simultaneously. They are not villains. They are part of the city's immune system, imperfect and vital. They look at Adrian as if he is a question filmed in good light. They look at Moses as if he is a question that shouldn't need to be asked. They look at Jalen the right way eventually, after Dina intervenes with the alchemy of her voice. Ask him how he feels, she says, gently redirecting a clipboard. Then listen. Jalen answers in that precise, tender way of children who know the stakes of adult decisions. My chest hurts less, he says. I slept. He looks at Adrian. Makes eggs too long, but they are good. Mr. Reed reads me the part about Orion. The dog knows not to lick my medicine spoon. I'm not scared here. I am still me. The room shifts almost imperceptibly. The man with the tie writes a note that looks suspiciously like approval remembered late. The woman with the glasses looks at Dina and relaxes her jaw. Paperwork folds itself into the shape of a bridge. Then the doorbell rings a second time, and the crisis changes color. It is not the city this time. It is the past. She stands in the threshold like a photograph found in a jacket that went through the wash. Blurred at the edges, colors not where they used to be, but unmistakable. She is small in the way people become when the world has argued them into corners. Her coat is not a coat for winter. Her nails are bitten maps. Her eyes go to Jalen like thirst goes to water. Mama? He whispers, and the word goes through the room like a siren becoming a lullaby and then a siren again. Baby, she says, and the syllable carries 100 apologies no sentence could hold. She looks at Adrian and Moses the way a fox looks at a fence. Calculating, grateful, ashamed. I heard, she says. I heard a man took you to the sky and gave you oranges. No one speaks because to speak would break something fragile and needed. Dina moves half forward as if to hold the room steady in her hands. Jalen takes a step, then another, then stops before he returns to her. He is learning how to pace his joy the way you pace breathing when you're out of breath. He looks at Moses, who nods once, a benediction disguised as a nod. He looks at Adrian, who can only manage an almost smile strangled by memory. Jalen moves into his mother's arms and disappears there in a way only small boys can. The first sob is relief. The second is apology. The third is a complicated chord. Love, fear, the sudden reappearance of something you had taught yourself not to need because it would hurt less if it never returned. I got sick, she says into his hair when words find her. I got better. I got lost. I got back. I came as soon as I heard. No one asks where she heard. Cities convey rumors the way rivers convey leaves. Dina's eyes flick to Adrian. This is the new map. He nods once to show he will be able to read it. The woman, her name, as they will learn, is Naomi, looks at Adrian the way a person looks at a judge and a benefactor and a stranger and an answer all at once. Thank you, she says, in the way of people who are old enough to remember when thank you meant survival. You're welcome, he says, and hopes the words carry enough not to break under the weight of what they are asked to hold. For a few minutes, there is only this. A boy in a mother's arms, a dog pressing against both of them as if to glue the moment together, a room learning a new gravity. Then the journalist from the coffee shop finds the elevator and the door he is not supposed to find. He is faster than he is kind. He steps into the entryway with a flash that tries to turn a family into content. Moses moves without thinking. He is not a violent man. He is good at placing his body between poor decisions and their consequences. He raises his hand, not closed, palm out. No. The journalist is good at turning NO into a story too. Ah, he says, the vagrant who returns money and guards doors. Is this a rescue or a ransom, Mr. Vale? Are we witnessing philanthropy or custody? He is about to say kidnapping because ransom pairs better with kidnapping in the economy of clicks. But the word dies on his tongue because something happens the room cannot deny. A wind moves through the entryway from a window that does not open. Not violent. Tender. It lifts the hair on Naomi's forehead the way a mother's hand would. It ruffles the pages on the clipboard to the exact place where Dina will later find the clause that makes what they are attempting possible. It raises the corner of a photograph face down on the hallway table and flips it so the face shows. A woman in a summer dress laughing at something a man off camera has just said. She is not Naomi. She is Adrian's wife, gone 3 winters now. The movement exposes the photograph to the room with the grace of curtain rising on a scene no one paid to see but everyone needed. The journalist lowers his camera without knowing why. His eyes adjust to a light not made by bulbs. Naomi, who has the animal intelligence grief gives, looks at the photograph and at Adrian and understands a sentence no one speaks. She holds her boy tighter and whispers into his hair. We are in a good house. The lullaby's 3 notes. More sure now, threaded to the room like stitching. Walk down the hallway and find Jalen and sit in his throat. He hums them back, softly at first. Then with the bravery of a child who finally believes someone will echo. Naomi breathes with the notes. Her shoulders stop climbing her ears. Dina clears her throat. Grateful for something practical to do that is also holy. We'll talk, she says briskly. The way angels might speak when they are pretending to be civil servants. About next steps that will not crush what is right. The journalist backs toward the door with a look on his face he will call professionalism when asked. He will print a story with less cruelty than he planned. And Adrian. Adrian stands with his hand on the table, looking at his wife's face laid open to the day for the first time in a year, and thinks, if this is madness, let it be the kind that heals. Night widens and the city reveals its other face, the one that speaks fluently in sirens and unasked prayers. Paperwork becomes tent stakes for a fragile home. Naomi sits on the library sofa with a blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes travel the books the way a ship studies the coast it hopes to reach. Jalen leans against her hip and feeds Rufus an orange segment pressed flat so the dog can taste sunshine without swallowing the seeds. Moses fixes the hinge he already fixed, because keeping his hands busy keeps his heart from sprinting. Adrian stands by the window that will not open and tries to learn the unteachable art of waiting. Dina has gone to draft a temporary care agreement that can hold mother and child together without tearing the cloth of what is right. The journalist's article has already begun its unkind march through screens, although it is softer than it could have been. He used the sentence, "A man remembered he is human." Still, the comments stretch their small nets. Adrian closes his eyes against them. Naomi clears her throat with the dry rasp of a page turned too quickly. "I didn't lose him," she says to the window, not to defend herself, but to put the sentence into the air so it can hear itself. "I lost me for a while. I meant to come back sooner." "You did." Moses answers without hesitation, as if sooner is a door anyone can open from either side. Jalen turns his face up to her. "You hear the notes, Mama?" He hums. 3 notes. The room exhales. Naomi smiles and matches him, thin and true. Later, when the penthouse settles, a knock comes with the threaded politeness of official hours. A man in a fitted suit stands with a woman whose gaze is tired of being misunderstood. They introduce themselves with law counsel assigned at the request of a relative who claims concern. The relative lives 3 states away and has never met Jalen. Concern is a word that travels further than love. Sometimes. "We're not here to remove the child," the suited man says. "We're here to ensure due process. There will be an emergency hearing in the morning to establish temporary custodial parameters." He speaks like a metronome that cannot stop. "Until then, we advise that the child remain with his mother in a neutral location." Neutral, Moses repeats, a word that tastes like dust. "The boy is under treatment," Dina says, arriving like the right kind of weather. "Moving him tonight is contraindicated." She holds up doctor's orders like a candle in fog. "And this home is stable." The law looks at the paper and does what it must. It nods but files the nod for morning. They leave with the promise of return. After the door closes, Naomi brings a hand to her temple. The blink she gives the room is a kind of flinch, brief and unconvincing. "Just lightheaded," she says. "I haven't been eating like a person who trusts tomorrow." Adrian says nothing, but the old, sharp knowledge sits up inside him. He walks to the kitchen and returns with broth and bread, and the kindness of it makes Naomi swallow too many tears to allow swallowing soup. Jalen watches with the intent vigilance of small boys who have learned to clock the temperature of a room by one adult's breathing. The 3 notes slip along the wall and settle in his chest. He hums them as if the sound itself could carry food into a person. Midnight finds them still awake. The apartment's silence is a fabric drawn lightly over a complicated machine. Naomi lies down with Jalen curled to her back like a question mark softened into an answer. Moses dozes upright in the chair, a carpenter refusing sleep until the structure holds. Adrian sits on the floor near the hall table, his palm over the photograph of his wife. He is not praying in any way he would have claimed, and yet, the air moves once across his knuckles. Warm as a bakery opened early, warm as oranges. He breathes. The notes come back, 3 and 3 more, and his chest stops bracing against them. At dawn, the test announces itself without words. Naomi stands to go wash her face and the room tilts. She sits again too quickly. Her breath floats shallow at the surface like a leaf not sure the river will hold it. Jalen startles awake at the exact second the color drains from her lips, because children are barometers before they are anything else. "Mama, it's all right," she says automatically, and then the honesty arrives, uninvited and necessary. "No, not yet. Hold my hand." Dina calls the clinic. The clinic calls the hospital. The hospital readies a bed the way a choir readies its throats. Moses lifts Naomi gently. Adrian calls the car. Rufus plants himself by Jalen's knee and does not move except to breathe when the boy does. The emergency room has its own liturgy, bright lights and consent forms and nurses who are mercy practicing triage. Naomi's pressure is low enough to be a whisper. Tests begin. The word infection pushes its way into sentences. The phrase untreated systemic stress follows like a shadow. It can be managed, a doctor says, believing herself because belief is part of medicine. But she needs rest. Real rest, not the city kind. Then the bailiff of the day arrives with his own liturgy, asking names with the authority of a schedule. Emergency family hearing, he announces in a voice that respects nobody's night. 10 a.m. downtown. She cannot go, Moses says, quiet enough to qualify as thunder. She doesn't have to, Dina responds, already reaching. I'll file for remote appearance. She meets Adrian's eyes, and the truth stands between them like a ledge. They may require a guardian ad litem recommendation for Jalen anyway. Temporary custodial clarity. Could be you, Adrian, or Moses, or both. But we will have to ask for more than kindness. Adrian nods and feels something shift behind his ribs. He recognizes the old reflex barreling in, the urge to fix this with speed and money and statements heavier than most people can carry. He stops it at the threshold. He looks at Naomi. Her eyes find him. The look is not supplication. It is assessment. Says, will you love him, not perform loving him? Will you be there after the first article goes stale? Can you stand in a room and tell a stranger the truth even if the truth breaks you open? He answers without words. He stands, goes to the window that does not open, and presses his hand to the glass. The city breathes against his palm. For once it is warm. He turns back to them all, boy, mother, friend, dog, and says the sentence he cannot logically justify and cannot survive not saying. He is my son, he says, and hears the words change him as they leave his mouth. And I will stand for him. Naomi closes her eyes with relief so tender it is almost a kiss. Good, she whispers. Then we're not lost. We just haven't finished the road yet. Adrian recognizes the echo. He will carry it to the judge and then beyond the judge. He takes Jalen's hand. We're going to the courthouse, he says softly. We will say what is true. Mr. Reed will stay with your mom and sing the notes she knows. Jalen nods. He straightens his shoulders the way soldiers do in stories. He places the star atlas into Adrian's messenger bag, as if packing guidance for the road. In case you forget where home is, he says, only half teasing. Moses leans down to Naomi. I will be here, he promises, and in his mouth here means more than a building. It means, I will not let the air grow thin. They separate the way people in love must sometimes separate, with ceremony and with speed. The courtroom is built of wood and worry. The judge, whose face has learned to listen without encouraging theater, watches the first volley of words sail across the room. The assigned counsel recites phrases like liabilities and undue influence and public perception. Dina answers with phrases like best interests and immediate health needs and protective stability. The law conducts its fugue with civility. The subtext conducts its own. Adrian stands when asked. He does not bring charisma. He brings the humbler bravery of a man who knows what it is to be wrong and still show up. State your name, the clerk intones. Adrian Vale. Occupation. Technology. He answers and then adds, to keep himself a person, widower. The courtroom hears the human word and shifts its weight to one leg. You claim this child as what? Ward? Dependent. Son, Adrian says, and the syllable places a chair at the table that was not there before. By love before law for now. By law when the law catches up. A murmur flutters and dies at the judge's raised brow. Explain your involvement. He does not produce the usual resume of acquisitions and awards. He tells, simply, the story. A bag, a man, a boy in a winter alley, a cough that rearranged his blood, oranges, a night of 3 notes, a photograph face down and turned. He leaves out the parts that belong only to the room that held them. He adds the parts that let everyone breathe. The clinic, the prescriptions, the social worker's plan. When the counsel presses, are you motivated by guilt? By publicity? He refuses to be clever. I am motivated by the fact that he is breathing better in my home than in an alley, he says. By the fact that love is not a press release. By the fact that when his mother walked through my door, the heir learned her name. There is a silence then, the useful kind. The judge watches him with the particular gaze of people who have long ago lost patience with performance but never with truth. Where is the mother now? In the hospital, Dina answers. Treatable, but fragile. And Mr. Reed? In the hospital with her, Adrian says. He is what? A friend, a guardian of the space love needs. He returned the bag. He returned the boy to safety, not to me but to the world. The judge nods once, as if awarding a point to no particular side but to the possibility that sides are not the only geometry available. The mother was notified of this hearing? She asked me to say this. Dina adds, reading from her notes with the restrained mercy of someone entrusted with a whisper. Keep him safe, keep him learning, and sing when he can't. Sing, the clerk repeats, puzzled. Sing. The judge echoes, not puzzled at all. At that moment, as if the city has been listening at the door and chooses its cue, a breeze crosses the courtroom. There are no windows open. There is only the high seal air courts cultivate against weather and noise. And yet papers lift. The American flag stirs with the solemnity of a choir beginning. A tear slides down the cheek of a bailiff with no reason to cry on duty. 3 notes. Not loud, not anything sound equipment could capture. Arrive like a promise remembering itself. The judge tilts her head a fraction. A woman who once had a mother who hummed in the kitchen, who once lost and found her own breath after a winter that overstayed. Let the record reflect, she says dryly, though her eyes are not dry, that some rooms tell the truth in their own ways. The gavel does not fall. She is not finished. I will grant immediate temporary guardianship to Mr. Vale for medical and educational decisions for the child, with the mother's consent when possible and with Mr. Reed recognized as a designated support adult. I will set a review hearing in 30 days. I will also appoint a guardian ad litem to ensure the child's voice is carried with authority that paper respects. And I will ask all counsel to remember, the law exists to name what love is already doing. Do not make me teach you that twice. The courtroom breathes out. Adrian sits because his knees require him to. He reaches for his phone, not to summon the press, but to summon the only 2 people who matter. A message already waits. A photograph from Moses. Naomi in a hospital bed, Jalen's atlas open across her knees, Rufus's head on the mattress, the boy's hand in his mother's, both of them smiling in that exhausted, newborn way of the newly reprieved. 3 dots appear, then a text. She's asking you to sing when you arrive. He answers with a single line. I will. They drive back through the noon that feels like morning again. At the hospital, corridors smell like antiseptic and forgiveness. Naomi blinks awake to see him in the doorway, his tie loosened, the courtroom still on his sleeves. How did the world treat you? She asks, too tired to pretend she does not care. It agreed to listen, he says. For now. The rest we can teach it. Sing, she says, with the audacity of the kind of woman who asks for what matters after too many days of not matching. He takes the boy's hand and begins with the only 3 notes he knows how to sing without breaking. He hums them softly. Jalen joins. Moses adds a lower thread. Naomi's breath finds a place between them. The notes are not magic, and they are. Machines beep their own counterpoint and then, somehow, sync. Naomi's pulse steadies into a rhythm that any drummer would call a groove. The air warms without the thermostat's permission. An orderly passing the door wipes his eye and blames it on dust that does not exist. Again. Naomi whispers, and they do. And in the corridor, a nurse who has forgotten she knows the song finds herself humming too. The hospital, which has performed more miracles than it will ever allow itself to claim, adds this small one to its unfiled stories. A family singing a room into health. In the late afternoon, Naomi sleeps deeply, the kind of sleep that belongs to people who are not required to wake for fear. Moses keeps watch with the benign fierceness of a lighthouse. Jalen draws on hospital menu paper. Stars and oranges and a window that does not open, shining. Adrian steps into the hall and leans his head back against a wall many foreheads have met. He does not thank a specific deity. He thanks the air for learning a new language. He thanks his wife, silently, for teaching him to fold flour into water with patience. He thanks whatever unnamed thing brought Moses into a restaurant and a boy into an alley at the precise moment a bag wanted to be more than a bag. He texts Dina, "Thank you." She answers with a single emoji, scales, balanced for once. The weeks following do not deign to be dramatic. They decide to be faithful instead. Papers find their signatures. Court dates stay on the calendar and then pass like crossings successfully made. The Guardian ad litem, a woman with laugh lines and a spine like a metronome, visits the penthouse and sits on the floor to play cards with Jalen while asking questions no child should have to answer, and yet this one does, with honesty that would make a lesser court ashamed. She writes a report that is not poetry but might as well be. The child is believed, and he is becoming. Naomi recovers slowly the way winter recedes, then tests its right to return, and then finally admits defeat to spring. She moves from hospital to a dignified room in a recovery facility near the park, where windows do open, and the air does not need excuses to touch skin. She meets with a counselor whose only agenda is to return her to herself. Some afternoons she walks with Moses and Jalen and Adrian beneath trees that remember 1,000 lovers who did not become famous and a handful who did and grew tired of it. She likes to sit on a bench and count the dogs and name them even when she doesn't know their names. "That one is Thursday," she says, watching a slow basset hound gallop like a stretched-out loaf of bread. Jalen laughs so hard passers-by turn and smile at the sound without knowing why. Adrian learns morning again. He learns where to place bowls so a child can reach them. He learns the math of inhalers and the ethics of school enrollment and the quiet pride of labeling a backpack with a name that is not his and yet now is part of his household. He keeps his company alive and well, but lets others steer on days when being a father is the only job he can afford to do poorly before he learns to do it well. At the 30-day review, the judge reads the Guardian's report, glances at Naomi's steadier posture, watches Jalen's face lift at the sound of Adrian's voice, notes Moses's presence like a tree you can lean against without asking permission. "We don't see this often," she says, neither smiling nor pretending not to. "A thing that began in spectacle and chose to become ordinary." She signs what she can. A formal, temporary guardianship for Adrian with Naomi's consent. A right of residence that makes the penthouse Jalen's home address in the eyes of the bureaucracy that needs such things. The judge sets a 6-month horizon for an adoption discussion, should that become the truest name. She looks at Naomi, who nods once. The nod says, "I intend to be here." It also says, "If I am not, love will know what to do." On the way out of the courthouse, a spring wind lifts the hair on their foreheads like a blessing passed from tree to temple. The journalist who wrote the first story waits outside with a new notebook and a face changed in a small way, chastened into curiosity. He approaches without the old appetite. "Mr. Vale," he says. "May I?" "You may walk with us," Adrian answers. "No questions today. Just feet." They walk to the park. The city performs its usual miracles. Buskers who turn air into gold. Toddlers who learn physics. Old men who gossip with pigeons. At a low fence, Naomi stops and puts her palm on the rough bark of a maple. She closes her eyes and hums 3 notes, barely audible. The wind answers, 3 notes, then 3 more, tapping the leaves as if a harp were learning English. "Do you hear that?" she asks, as if anyone could not. "I do," Adrian says. "I thought I was the only one who did." "People who needed it most heard first," Moses says. "That's how help travels when it's shy." That evening, back home, they pull the dining table from its role as museum piece into its true vocation. Bowls and plates appear without choreography. Laughter arrives without apology. Someone spills water and apologizes. Someone else says, "Spill as often as necessary. That is how we learn our edges." Jalen asks if stars have edges. Adrian says they do not, they have atmospheres and influence instead. He realizes as he speaks that he is describing love. After dinner, Jalen asks if they can turn the picture of Adrian's wife face up again when she wants to watch the room. "I think she already is," he says, wary of making promises for a dead woman. "But it helps me to see her seeing." Adrian hesitates, as a man might hesitate before opening a door he has learned to live without. Then he nods. "She would have liked your oranges," he says, and the sentence arrives without pain for the first time. He sets the photograph on the mantel. The air moves, the small, familiar wind, and the frame settles at the exact angle that makes the woman's gaze fall on the table, not the window. Family, not skyline. Rufus circles twice and drops, the arc of a satisfied life. Moses exhales. Naomi watches the room fill itself with a future that is not rich in currency but is lavish in belonging. She does not announce her next appointment or her next fear. She lets the present swell like a tide at slack water, holding all their ankles kindly. Months later, under a sun that has learned how to be generous again, a modest hall that used to be a warehouse opens its doors to a crowd that has nothing in common except a willingness to show up. A hand-lettered sign reads, "Voices at Dawn Books. Bread. Breathing Lessons." Someone pinned a paper orange to the sign. Someone else stuck 3 gold star stickers over the O of Voices so the word glows early. Inside, shelves made of reclaimed wood hold stories that smell like rain. A long table along one wall holds sliced loaves beside small cards that say where they came from. Churches, delis, one lonely billionaire's kitchen. A small room in the back holds a humidifier and a chair and a nurse who has decided to work 1 day a week for free because she remembers how someone once hummed in her doorway and changed the air. Adrian stands near a paper banner with the same frightening happiness. He felt the day. He mistakenly called himself a father and got away with it. He speaks briefly, the way people speak when they know words are better as bridges than as monuments. "Thank you for bringing your mornings," he tells the room. "Thank you for teaching mine." Naomi, whose hair has grown back into itself, laughs with a woman from her recovery group over a story about soup that burned because both were too busy humming. She still sees a counselor. She still has bad days. She has many more good ones. She staffs the front table twice a week and has learned to say no without shame and yes without apology. Moses runs his hand along a shelf he built and feels the low, righteous pleasure of wood that sits where it is told and stays. He shows a kid how to plane a rough edge without losing the board's personality. "The trick," he says, "is not to demand perfection from anything meant for holding." Jalen sits beneath the banner with a smaller child pressed against his side. He is teaching him Orion and the Pleiades. He still coughs some winters, but he has learned to breathe between. He hums the 3 notes so quietly only the smaller boy hears. The smaller boy hums back in a pitch 2 years higher. Outside, a breeze lifts the corners of the banner and lets it fall again, like a chest agreeing to keep going. The journalist is there too, without his notebook, carrying a bag of bagels his grandmother used to buy on Sundays. He has learned that some stories taste better than they read. He holds the door for an old man who once slept near the river and now sleeps under a roof with rent his own hands earn. The old man nods. "Heard the singing from the corner," he says. "Came to see if the bread is as good as the music." It is. At the edge of the crowd, a small framed photograph leans on a windowsill. A woman in a summer dress laughing at something just off camera. Someone tucked 3 tiny pressed orange leaves into the frame. In the afternoon light, it looks as if she is wearing a crown made of simple things. As the event thins to the handful who always stay late to wipe tables and stack chairs, Jalen carries a bag of leftover oranges to the door. A boy stands on the sidewalk, alone in the way that dares you to name it. Jalen recognizes the stance the way one recognizes a reflection. He approaches with the awkward confidence of someone who has practiced both fear and courage. "Hungry?" he asks. The boy shakes his head, then nods. "I'm not lost," he says, as if remembering a script he only half believes. "I just haven't finished my road." Jalen smiles and presses an orange into his hand. "Same," he says. "Come in anyway." The boy steps over the threshold. The wind pushes gently at his back as if to say yes. Some stories insist on beginning with gold rooms and glass views and bags that snap like secrets. But the true measure of them is taken later, in rooms that smell like oranges and paper and bread, where voices learn to greet mornings by name. It is measured in a man's willingness to kneel on a wet city floor and call a stranger son before he has proof that the word will be returned. It is measured in a mother's courage to admit she was lost and to walk back anyway, trusting the air to remember her. In a friend's steadfastness that made doors open and winds rise and photographs turn face up in the world's sight again. If you ask the city what happened here, it will tell you a man returned a bag and a boy learned to breathe and a judge signed her name beneath a possibility that had already become a home. But if you listen for the quieter version, the one that travels on 3 notes, you will hear breath learning to be brave. You will hear a lullaby that belongs to no one and therefore to everyone. You will hear a small miracle refusing spectacle and choosing, again and again, to become ordinary. Wealth bought the table. Love set the places. Truth sat down and stayed. Where algorithms pointed at risk, a dog put his head on a boy's knee and recalibrated the math. Where windows refused to open, the air found another way in. And while nothing that mattered could be proved, everything that mattered could be sung. Remember this if you must measure your life by what you can hold. Money will build a tower, but only love turns a floor into a room and a room into a home. Remember this if you are tempted to pass by. The smallest act, an orange saved, a bag returned, a hand held, a song hummed almost under your breath. Maybe the hinge the world is waiting to swing on. The greatest legacy is not a fortune balanced on ledgers or a name etched in glass. It is a breath steadied by a lullaby. It is a child who knows the path back to warmth. It is a table that never sits empty again. And if you doubt that such things still move through cities of steel, stand in a quiet doorway some evening and listen. You may feel a gentle wind. You may hear 3 notes. That will be love, finding you where you are, asking nothing, and changing everything.